Hello, hello, and welcome to my thought on this very warm, suffocating Friday that finally cooled down at night. It's very late at night when I'm getting to this at last. And I'm thinking about hot days and innocence. Because although I do burlesque and I use a lot of four-letter words and discuss a lot of sexual things in my comedy, I'm actually very innocent. And people don't realize that the first time I actually saw a real condom was when I started singing about it. And then someone showed me what it was. Well, actually, I had seen it before, I just hadn't realized it. I was a counselor at a camp in Port Clinton, Ohio. It was a Jewish camp. It was called, I think, Camp Walbridge. And I was a counselor there. And Port Clinton in America was, in Ohio, was the home of, it's a very small town, just outside of Toledo, but it was the home of the biggest whorehouse in Ohio. And as a matter of fact, my father was their accountant, and they were sued for income tax evasion. And my father won the case. And I said, "How did you do it?" He said, "By counting the towels." And it wasn't until I was about this age that I understood what he meant, which was, of course, that they said they had a certain number of clients, and if you counted the towels to clean up after each act, they matched. And that's how my father won the case. But in Port Clinton was this famous whorehouse. It was called Rosie's. It was called Rosie's. And I taught at a very proper Jewish camp for young children, and I was a counselor there. And Sunday was visiting day. And Port Clinton is very close to Toledo, so an awful lot of families would come up. The mothers and daddies would come up to visit their children. But I didn't, as a matter of fact. I didn't know about Rosie's. I found that out later. But what used to fascinate me is the mothers and fathers would come up, and then the fathers would usually leave. And I thought maybe they were bored with camp activities. They would just leave, and they would probably tell their wives things like, "I'm going to go in to stop at the drugstore. I'm going to get myself a cool drink," something like that. I, of course, didn't know. But when we had visiting Sunday, it was mostly the mothers that were there, even though the fathers and mothers drove up. And on Monday of these visiting Sundays, the entire place would be lit, the lawn would be littered with white things, white rubber things. And we used to walk from the cabins down to the main house, and the children would pick up these little white objects and blow them up like balloons. And I had no idea what they were. And I remember walking down toward the main house with a friend whose name was, believe it or not, Harlan Britz. That was his name. And I saw the children blowing these balloons. And I said to him, "Isn't that adorable?" And he said, "Oh my God, that's disgusting." And I couldn't understand why. And neither did the children. They didn't understand what was going on. It wasn't until years and years and years later when I made up a song, a parody of a Teresa Brewer song about Viagra. And I thought it would be funny. Of course, I knew about condoms, but we had never used them. When I was young, men used condoms with prostitutes, but they did not use them in regular marriage, or at least we certainly didn't, because you weren't as worried about disease. You see, it was so different. So I had never seen a condom. And when I sang the song is "Put another capsule in, wait an hour, then begin to love me like you used to do," to music, music, music. And I thought it would be fun to hand condoms out to the audience. And I would go into, at that time I was living in San Francisco, and I would go into gay bars where they gave condoms away. It was free. And I would get a pile of condoms, and people would say, "What are you doing?" And, "What are you doing with that?" Because, of course, I was 72 or 73 years old, and I'd say, "Oh, I'm having a party." but I still had never seen what was in the package, And one of my favorite stories about that is because I used to run out of these condoms because I threw them at the audience. And I went to Long's drugstore, and anybody that's watching me that's from the States, they know Long's. And I was looking around, and I finally found some condoms. Now, Long's trains their cashiers to be very polite to the audience, and they always say, after they checked out your products, whatever you bought, they always say, "Is there anything else you need?" And I went through and I had a box of condoms. I think I had some that were ribbed for your pleasure or something. They were actually the cheapest, smallest box I could get because I was singing the song that night. And the woman, without looking at me, just was checking it out. And she says, "Is there anything else you need?" And I said, "Yes, I couldn't find the aisle for the whips and chains." And then she looked at me, and the woman aged 20 years in my before me. But it wasn't until, maybe a couple of years later that somebody showed me a condom that had not been in the package. And then the penny dropped. And that was, oh my God, that was 50, almost 60 years since I'd seen those children blowing up the white balloons. And the penny dropped. And I thought, my God, that's what they were blowing up. But they were blowing up condoms. They were blowing up used condoms, which is why Harlan thought it was so disgusting. But that brings me to another observation. And the observation is that disgusting or not disgusting is in the eye of the beholder. Much as I tell you, the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And these little children were doing absolutely nothing to incite Harlan's scorn because they were simply blowing up little balloons, and they thought they were balloons. I thought they were balloons. And Harlan, because of his filthy, stinking mind, he knew they weren't. But that's men for you. And thank you so much for joining me for my thought on this lovely Friday.